Hello and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Jeri Sedlar, author of Don't Retire, Rewire, and really an icon on speaking about the R word. Hi, Jeri.
Hey, Judith.
The R word's going around these days.
Really?
Right? Nice to have you on. I couldn't help but think about you this morning. I was coming down in the elevator of my building, and I heard one of the tenants sharing a story with someone else saying, oh, my husband retired recently, and he's so bored, and he's driving me out of my mind. He only wants me to retire. And I thought, Jeri Sedlar. I'm going to tell him to read Don't Retire, Rewire. So what advice do you have for this guy that's in my building? Maybe I'll run into his wife again.
Yeah, this is good because that's what's happening. I think people are under-planning about how they're going to spend their time because there's been so much focus always on the monetary side of this. Do you have enough money to retire? But the question should be, so then when you retire, what are you going to do? And my big thing is, what are you going to do that fulfills you? Because that man could honestly be doing some things that he says, I'm being busy, but it's not fulfilling to him. And that's how he's getting bored.
So let's get down to, we want to give people their money's worth here. Yeah. So it's not just enough to say that you're okay financially. That's not enough.
No.
It's not enough to say, oh, I'm going to take a long vacation. Not enough, right?
Well, you may want to take the vacation, but you've got to come back to something.
And how about saying, oh, I'm going to love spending so much time with my spouse?
Well,
how about that, Jeri?
Okay, I have heard that. In fact, I call it TMI. People have told me too much information about that. Look, I want people to have his, hers, and our retirement. So I want the wife, if she has not been doing paid work, to understand when this husband comes home, he's left a lot there, that where he's got his recognition, maybe where he's been valued. Other stuff is going on at work.
So
she may not get it.
So for folks who are thinking about retirement, and by the way, that's a good question. Let me stop for a minute. When should you start thinking about it, Jeri?
My feeling is the minute you get a chance to participate in a 401k, that's when it really begins, because that means you're taking care of the financial part. But remember today, Judith, people are retiring. Even though we had started to move it younger, people are working longer now.
And they're living longer, too.
But that's how this all ties together now. We've got this enhanced longevity. So if you're really thinking about, well, I could be living another 20 to 25 years after the age of 65, then you have to think, what am I going to do with all that time?
Do you know this? Hallmark last year sold 85,000 happy 100th birthday cards.
Okay. So well, do you know out of the baby boomers?
Yeah.
3 million are anticipated to reach 100.
Okay. So, all right. So the fact is, the things that you got from work,
right.
I think you call them drivers in your book.
Right.
Okay. And what are some of those drivers?
Well, people will say, I'm here to have the accomplishments.
Oh, a sense of accomplishment. A sense of purpose.
Purpose is another one.
Right.
Then people say, I want the recognition. For many people, your work's been your identity.
Sure.
It's your ego. It's your business card. My belief is you better know that before you leave, because I want you then to say, find activities that are going to fulfill some of those drivers.
And also, what about, I don't know what you call it, a sense of community, but the social interaction that you get.
It's key. I'm almost at the point now of saying to people, who's in your community? How many communities do you have? I'm saying you should have 3 or 4 different communities, and the key thing is don't have everybody the same age.
Right.
I want to have people, I want to be with 20-year-olds.
Okay, so we're now debunking some of the myths.
Yeah.
We're debunking the myths about no good to have just enough money, necessary, crucial, but not the only answer. No good to say I'm going to take a permanent vacation, okay? No good to say I'm going to be with my wife and travel all over, unless you, or my husband, if it's the case. So, and we said, well, you have to have. You have to have a sense of fulfillment, purpose, community, diversion. But how does someone get through that transition? How do you get the driver's satisfaction when you're on the cusp of retirement? How do you do that?
I want people to think that this is a process and it is a journey. One, take a snapshot of where your life is today. Is it out of balance? Is it in balance? Take a look at where I'm spending my time, and am I enjoying it? So where are you getting fulfillment? Then we show people in the book to say, all right, everything that you would give up if you left your job or sold your business, then look at your calendar. People are stunned, Judith, because all of a sudden there's an awful lot of white space there.
Yeah, right.
So there's this freedom.
Right.
You know, people do get shocked. So
yeah, it's very shocking.
Taking a look at that calendar, saying what activities it's okay to let them go away. Which ones are you going to miss? Then how do I begin to keep those things? And then this is a stage of life to say, what are some of the things I postponed? People have interests. They've got different hobbies, sports that they want to take up. So then you begin to get that list down. Then others will say, I want to continue to work, not maybe because I have to, but maybe because I want to. What are some of my skills? What are my competencies? What is it that I like to do? You know, you're seeing the studies now. People are saying AARP for set. 80% of people want to work in retirement.
Right.
Merrill Lynch is saying all of a sudden 60% want to work, but not necessarily at what they did before. They could be going into something, trying to go into TV, going into radio, becoming a journalist. Others are saying, you know, I want to make a difference. I'm hearing somebody who left the automotive, who in the downturn that happened to them, they're going into nursing. So you're really seeing people thinking
They're
differently.
almost getting like a third career or a post-retirement career.
Right.
You know, do you know anything? Have you heard much about this volunteering for money?
Yes. Now, this is a new thing that's
I want to
coming
ask
up.
you about that. Volunteering has kind of taken on a negative word of late. It used to be considered a very rewarding thing to do.
Well, it still is rewarding, but first, let me say one thing. Men don't really consider themselves as volunteering. They like to sit on a board. They like to be on an advisory council. They like to be a leader. So when wives will say, I told my husband to go to volunteer, one man said to me, tell my wife not to say that because it reminds me of when I was in the Army and they told you don't volunteer for anything. So that's the first thing. But the second, we're seeing it with boomers, that we're saying, I want to do volunteer work, but there are people that will need to get paid something. I talked to people in Michigan on Meals on Wheels, and they said, all of a sudden with the price of gas now, I need to get compensated in some way.
Need some expenses or something.
Absolutely. So they're calling that a stipend volunteer. The other big thing that's going on is people are saying, I don't necessarily want to have to be committed to doing something once a week. So now we're seeing this new thing called the episodic. It's kind of like the Habitat for Humanity. People want to come in, they want to do the work in one day, and then they want to leave. So this is me, you know,
kind of like a project or something.
That's it.
A project.
I want to, paint the park, come in and do this. So if it's this done in a day, what happens to nonprofits then? Because they need the volunteers to come in to do that. Wow. So, you know, the rewiring is organizations and individuals.
Well, so, I mean, it seems to me also, Jeri, that we're talking about something that there ought to be some kind of a dual strategy on the corporation side and on the nonprofit side to figure out a better way to use folks who want to work less and be in retirement. I mean, isn't it a shame that corporations just turn loose all this brain power that could be used to teach or counsel or mentor employees that are still there?
Things are happening.
Is that changing?
This is the good news, yes.
Oh, good.
First, let me even say something like IBM. They have the most wonderful program, which is called Transition to Teaching. So those are people who are of retirement eligible age. They started this as a pilot and they're rolling it out now, and they're really focusing on the math and the sciences. And they've recently announced that they're going to do a transition to nonprofit and into federal government
in
jobs.
In the schools or in their corporations?
No, in the schools.
Oh, in the schools.
And where we have such a shortage. So to me, that was a wonderful thing that occurred. And then just recently, here in New York City, it was Citigroup that held this, but it's the Pro Bono Summit that was here coming out of Washington, D.C. And just what you're saying, how do you get people together from the corporate side to really get people volunteering earlier so in the later years, you're definitely already have the history of volunteerism.
You already have maybe a foot up a couple rungs of the ladder.
Right.
I mean, that seems to make much more sense.
It's good things that's happening.
Okay, so for folks who are watching us who now say, okay, I get it. I can't just stop.
Right.
I have to start. I'm going to start by listing maybe hobbies I have that I could turn into a part-time business or people I know, connections where I can...
your network, your relationships.
I can network. it sounds like an awful lot of work, Jerry.
Well, okay, let's cut right through. It is.
It is
because it's your
life.
life.
It's almost like working again.
Well, I can't believe it just said that to me this morning. It is, but my belief is the more you start thinking about this early on, just what you said, then it doesn't seem to all come at you at once and make it like work. But one of the things I want to add is there are many industries today: oil, gas, energy, healthcare, nursing, the government, teaching. They're already having that brain drain. So they are saying, we don't want you to be leaving. So they are taking a look at flexible programs. They're looking at retention. So what I'd love to tell the audience too is, don't assume that in your organization that they might not want to keep you if you're valued.
Exactly.
If you have skills that are good, you need to continue to keep educating yourself.
Right. So if you keep yourself current,
That's it.
I have to say, I was away. I just got back from a holiday for 7 days, and I have to say, I took a good look at many of the more mature vacations that I saw that were using their BlackBerries.
Right.
And I started to say, I didn't bring my BlackBerry. I thought, oh my gosh, I feel like, oh,
you're out of it.
I'm out of it. I didn't bring my BlackBerry with me. So keeping current with the technology to the best you can, and also approaching your corporation where you work and seeing if maybe you can't work out some kind of a new program,
Absolutely.
a flex time, offer to spend less hours and maybe get paid less.
Well, that's it. You
have to take a cut, right, and pay.
Right. Usually.
You have to be realistic.
Well,
yes.
but that's it, too. But I have to tell you something on the BlackBerry, because this issue or version of Don't Retire, Rewire was updated. And one of the things that we put in there was that somebody had said to me, 59-year-old man interviewing for a new job, and he said, they want me to use a BlackBerry. I don't want to. And my comment then was, then you don't want that job.
Right.
And he was surprised. And it was a new twist that I gave to him, though, because he said, I don't want to be beholden. And I said, a BlackBerry can also give you freedom.
Right.
And that's a new way of looking at the future.
Well, also, or the cell phone, it doesn't mean just because you have it that you have to answer it.
Okay.
You don't have to be texting every minute just because you have it, right?
And don't be this perfectionist. I've got to respond immediately. So, learn to rebalance your own self.
Right. So, really, when you're talking about rebalancing, all this you're talking about, what we're really talking about is almost like you go inside and you're rewiring.
Wow, that's it.
You've
got to rewire your mindset.
You have to rewire your mindset
before your activities.
Right. And you have to do this to be successful pretty early on.
Well, let me say, if you are thinking, and maybe you have set the state, I want to be out of here at 60. Well, then by 55, you should have a good idea of where you are financially. Do you even have enough to consider this?
Yeah.
And if you have to continue to work in retirement, do you want it to be at your same company, at a competitor, or at something brand new?
Or something else. So I think the key is, Jeri, because we're running out of time, and I've had you on. You're always a wonderful guest. So thank you very much for being on. The key is really to spend almost as much time, or even more time, thinking about how you're going to rewire as you did, giving consideration to your career movement.
Great advice.
Okay.
I love it.
Thanks so much for being on, and thank you for watching.